Welcome. This video will discuss what an appendix is, what can be included in an appendix, how to format an appendix, and some examples of what an appendix looks like. I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara traditional owners of the land from which I am recording today. An appendix, or appendices, are included at the end of your paper to provide supporting evidence to the body of your work. It is primarily supplementary material which gives context to information that you have used in your assignment. The content of appendices are typically lengthy reports, additional materials that relate to the topic of your assignment, and any relevant statistical or textual information that hinders the flow of your paper. Information that you can include in your appendices may be raw data, for example, your FoodWorks report, food diary, meal plan or recipe, figures such as graphs, images, infographics and maps, tables, prescriptions, calculations and formulas, block text such as translations, letters and emails, interview questions or diagnostic tests, and questionnaires or surveys. How do I build an appendix? Every appendix requires for it to be placed after the reference list, and even though you put it after your reference list, all of the references that you've used in your appendix are still put into that reference list. It requires that you present your appendices in the same order that they are introduced. The order of the appendix is determined by the order that you introduce the information in the body of your assignment. It requires that you refer the reader to each appendices with an in-text citation. For example, see Appendix B. And it requires that each appendix, figure and table must be labelled with both a heading, title, and a note. The note is where you include your referencing information. And again, that referencing information is then included in your reference list. For a singular appendix, in that you only have enough information for one appendix, you would refer to it in text only as appendix. The heading of your appendix is the same. You don't require a letter label. If you have multiple appendices or enough information for more than one appendix, you would refer to it in text as Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, and so on. There is no limit on the amount of appendices that you choose to include, and it is your choice as how best to present the information so to support your assignment. Information in your appendices is not included in your word count. Each appendix is assigned a letter and a descriptive title. This is always centralized. You can see this in the first example. If you are presenting more than one table or figure in an appendix, then you require a heading for your information. This will depend on the type of information you are presenting. It can be figure for figures or table for tables. Figures and tables also require a descriptive caption in addition to the heading. This information is always left justified, as you can see in the second example. I will now go further to describe the different ways to present information for multiple appendices. The following examples is for an assignment with 5 appendices. There is no limit to how many appendices you want to include in your assignment. I do want to suggest that you plan the appendices well so that it works best with the body of your assignment. The first appendices is an example of a table in an appendix. It was the first appendix cited in the body of your assignment, which is why it is labelled Appendix A. You would refer the reader to this appendix by using a narrative citation, for example, as seen in Appendix A, or a parenthetical citation, in brackets, see Appendix A. You can see at the top that there is an appendix label and a heading. Because there is only one table in this appendix, the next piece of information is the table, followed by the note. The information in this note is then repeated in your reference list. This is an example of multiple tables in an appendix. It was the second appendix cited in the body of your assignment, which is why it's labeled Appendix B. You would refer the reader to this appendix by using the table numbers rather than the appendix label. And you can do this in either a narrative way, for example, as seen in Table B1, or parenthetically, in brackets, see Table B2. There's still an appendix label at the top and a heading for the appendix. However, each table has its own unique table number and heading and note. The information from the notes may be the same in this instance. You repeat the information under each table because each table requires a note. However, you would only need one instance of this reference in the reference list. This is an example of text in an appendix. Even though it runs over 2 pages, information belongs in one appendix. It was the third appendix cited in the body of your assignment, which is why it is labeled Appendix C. You would refer the reader to this appendix by using a narrative citation, for example, as seen in Appendix C, or a parenthetical citation, in brackets, see Appendix C. This appendix has an appendix label and a title. However, because it's all from one report or one meal plan in this instance, it doesn't require a secondary heading or title or label. You'll also notice that this has been written by the author of the assignment or the student who wrote the assignment, and that means it doesn't require a reference either in the appendix or in the reference list. This is an example of a figure in appendix. It was the fourth appendix cited in the body of your assignment, which is why it is labeled Appendix D. You would refer the reader to this appendix by using a narrative citation, for example, as seen in Appendix D, or a parenthetical citation, in brackets, see Appendix D. It has only one piece of information belonging to this appendix, so it does not require a figure, label, or heading, and you can refer to it just as Appendix D, the appendix label. It has one descriptive title, and it still has that information for referencing. You'll notice that this information is exactly the same as the previous tables, even though it has its own note, which is required for each figure and table. You only need to have the information in the reference list once. This is an example of multiple figures in an appendix. It was the fifth appendix cited in the body of your assignment, which is why it is labeled Appendix E. You would refer the reader to this appendix by using the figure numbers rather than the appendix label, either in narrative, for example, as seen in figure E2, or parenthetically in brackets, see figure E4. Each figure must be referred to in the body of your assignment. For this example, even though the appendix runs over 2 pages, the figures are still numbered consecutively from E1 through to E4. There is an appendix label and a descriptive heading, but each figure still has its own figure label and heading and note. All examples for this video can be found on the Referencing Library Guide. For information, please book a consultation with a librarian. Thank you for your time.